Hello there. It's a brand new week with a brand new cultural adventure for us to embark on. We'll start on a musical note today as we meander our way through the fascinating and unique percussive styles of Go Group. Later on, it's a dive straight into the diverse possibilities of patterns on fabric as we get a chance to chat with one artist boasting a Yemeni, Bosnian, and American heritage. And have you ever heard of an art called shibori? With all of its artistic twists and turns, it's a Japanese art sure to impress. So do stay tuned to find out more. Go Group percussion band amaze music lovers. A chat with multimedia artist Aliyah Ali and her project People of Pattern. And then it's off to discover more about shibori, a Japanese color dyeing technique. Traditional musical instruments with their beautiful sounds are an integral part of Vietnamese traditional music. They have been an important part of Vietnamese traditional music in all parts of the country, whether it be north to south and everywhere in between. And making them actually requires dexterity and meticulousness. So in this week's episode, we'll get a deeper insight into the craft.
Along with a variety of different music genres, Vietnam therefore has a wide range of traditional musical instruments. They have been familiar with many Vietnamese music lovers and are like friends to many artists.
Đối với người nghệ sĩ trong ca hát dân gian và những người nghệ nhân làm đàn, nó giống như những người bạn tri kỷ với nhau. Ví dụ như là cụ nghệ nhân hát sẩm Chùa Nguyên của Hà Nội, một nghệ nhân hát sẩm rất là nổi tiếng ở đất Kinh Kỳ này của những năm giữa thế kỷ 20 trở về trước. Duy nhất một nghệ nhân có thể chế tác được ra những cái cây đàn bầu và những cây đàn nhị mà để làm cho cụ hài lòng, đó là nghệ nhân Đương ở phố Hàng Nón. Và dù có trên một cái chặng đường ca hát, dù có đi đâu thì khi mà cần phải chỉnh lại cái âm thanh của những cây đàn hoặc chế tác những cây đàn mới thì cụ chỉ có tìm đến duy nhất một cái địa chỉ như vậy thôi.
Phạm Chí Khánh is the son of Phạm Chí Đương, a famous traditional musical instrument maker in Hanoi. With a love for Vietnamese traditional music and instruments, he has followed his family's tradition to continue making traditional instruments. The process of making those instruments consists of many steps and requires skill. Choosing the materials for their body is the first and decisive step.
Gỗ làm mặt đàn đấy là mình phải lấy cái loại gỗ mua đồng, phải lấy những cây mà đã đủ tuổi rồi, nó già và nó có đường kính trên 40 cân. Cái gỗ mua đồng này đặc biệt, nó là gỗ rất xốp, không muốn mòn. Nếu làm tất cả các loại gỗ khác thì vẫn được, nhưng mà âm thanh nó cũng hay và cái độ bền nó cũng có.
Techniques to make those traditional instruments are also important so they will sound good. For example, the body of dantang or zither must have thickness of about 4 centimeters. It will then be heated on fire and bent using water. Meanwhile, the two-string fiddle has a diameter of 6 centimeters. The technique of tightening its surface cover is very important and difficult. Besides those details, attaching frets onto the fingerboard is also a factor affecting how instruments sound.
Điều chỉnh, gắn khoảng cách các cái phím này để lấy các nốt nhạc. Mà cái đàn này thường nó có hai kiểu gắn. Một kiểu gắn theo kiểu 7 âm có 2 bán cung. Đấy. Một đằng thì gắn theo kiểu của Việt Nam mình ấy, của cổ của mình ấy là một bát độ chia đều, không có bán cung, không có nửa cung. Đấy, nó thành 5 cung đều nhau. Đấy là của mình. Đây là thường đàn tỳ này là mình gắn theo kiểu cung đình. Đấy, theo kiểu của mình thì mới đánh được các cái bài nhạc rồi giữa các thứ cung đình, những cái nhạc truyền thống của mình, ví dụ đờn ca tài tử hay là quan họ hay thậm chí chèo cũng có thể đánh được. Các cụ ngày xưa là chế tác bằng cái dây tơ của cái con tằm thì các cụ xe vào to tiến xanh rồi nọ kia, rồi nó cuối cùng là nó cũng thất thoát đi. Những người làm cái dây tơ này thì người ta cũng không còn. Lâu ra mình mới gọi cũng nghĩ lại trong để mình phục chế. Thì quả thật ngày xưa đây là hai cái đàn như nhau, mắc hai cái đàn độ to như nhau, độ dày như nhau, bưng ra cũng ra chăn như nhau. Thế nhưng mà đây một cái đàn này mắc một dây tơ. Cái thứ nhất là nhìn cái dây nó to hơn nhá. Đấy, cái này thì mắc bằng dây ni lông. Đấy. Thế cái dây này thì nó nhỏ hơn mà cứ âm thanh lấy độ cao bằng nhau. Nhưng mà hai âm thanh thì nó khác ở chỗ này. Cái dây tơ nó mang tính chất mộc mạc hơn và tiếng nó gọn. Đấy, tiếng nó gọn hơn. Cái này là thâm.
Traditional musical instruments have existed for a long time and are familiar to many Vietnamese people. And to such artisans and artists, they are a treasure.
We go now into a different form of music, a more unique one, you may say. Different to conventional musical works written for string instruments and orchestra, the music of Go Group might sound quite peculiar to the seasoned ears. Founded in 2010, the Go Group has definitely delighted the senses of audiences with its unique percussive style of music. We explore now the amazing sound of the Go Group in this week's edition of Culture and Lifestyle.
Trần Xuân Hòa, Bùi Anh Dũng, and Nghiêm Mạnh Tuấn are three percussionists who have worked with different orchestras in Hanoi. They studied at the Vietnam National Academy of Music. In 2010, they founded a band to develop their passion for percussion. Go Groove is the first independent percussion band here in Vietnam.
Khi mà cái thời gian đầu tiên và cách đây 7 năm ấy, chúng tôi mà không được khai nhà hát giao hưởng Việt Nam ấy, nhà hát nhạc vũ Việt Nam hỗ trợ về cái nhạc cụ thì chúng tôi cũng sẽ không làm sao mà biến cái giấc mơ của mình thành hiện thực được. Sau một quãng thời gian biểu diễn cũng khá dài, chúng tôi bắt đầu nhận định chúng tôi sẽ phát triển từ những cái nhạc cụ mà những cái vật dụng rất đời thường.
So Go Group owns many kind of instruments. Some of their instruments are things in our normal life, such as a table or a bottle. So I think we should challenge them a little bit to see how they can create sound from such normal things. Here we have a table. I think we can have a key and a glass with a spoon. So let's see how they create sound from these stuff.
Spontaneous could be one word to describe the band. This feature is showed not only in the band's performing style, but also in their way of creating music.
Thường ấy thì những cái ý tưởng về sáng tác ấy, bọn mình đến rất là ngẫu hứng. Cái tác phẩm Đoàn Tàu mà nhóm vừa viết ra cách đây không lâu ấy thì là bắt đầu là anh Tuấn, ban đầu anh có ý tưởng là tôi muốn xây dựng một cái tác phẩm trống trên cái âm thanh của đoàn tàu rời bến, thì mọi người bắt đầu mới chọn nhạc cụ như thế nào, cái tiếng dồn dập của tàu đầu máy như thế nào thì mình mới chọn tiếng trống gì, tiết tấu ra sao. Trước đây thì chúng tôi hay lấy những tác phẩm của người nước ngoài, nhưng mà sau dần một thời gian thì chúng tôi nghĩ là tại sao mình không sáng tác. Vì mình sáng tác thì mình sẽ nói rõ được những cái câu chuyện của mình muốn nói để đưa tới khán giả hơn.
In a musical ensemble, percussive instruments play a role in creating beat. It was a challenge for the Go Group originally when they separated this kind of instrument from an orchestra.
Cái phần mất thời gian nhất là làm sao để mà bọn mình hiểu được hết tính năng của các loại nhạc cụ trong dàn nhạc để rồi rút gọn lại cho bộ gõ có thể chơi được đầy đủ tính năng của cả dàn nhạc.
Considered by people here an unusual form of music, the Go Groove are thought to be hard to understand at first. However, as the band begins to play, once people fall into the group's percussive rhythms, they will be immersed in it. The positive response from the audiences underlines the Go Group's success.
The thing I liked about this performance was the different instruments they use and how a group of people use different instruments to create different sounds and how everything comes together.
Cái đơn nhạc cụ đơn giản như là một miếng gỗ hay là một thanh tre đều tạo ra những âm thanh rất là tuyệt vời trong cuộc sống này. Và có lẽ là không chỉ nghe những bản hòa tấu, piano, violin hay là guitar, cây điểm mới đem lại cảm xúc, mà thực sự là ngày hôm nay với những bộ gõ đơn giản đem lại cho mình một buổi tối rất là thú vị.
As its name, Go Groove, the band concentrates on progressing. The band next intends to combine their unique music with some Vietnamese theatrical arts such as tuồng and treo and other folk arts from abroad. So, watch this space.
You're tuning into Culture Mosaic, our weekly journal featuring the rich cultural diversity of the nation. We hope to become a bridge that connects artists and their work to our viewers out there. So, do you want to continue on this journey through various culture scenes here in Vietnam? We have a lot more coming up in this week's installment of Culture Mosaic. Each fabric pattern has its own cultural story. You can learn much about a country via its traditional costumes and the patterns that they contain. Now, that is what the Yemeni Bosnian American multimedia artist Aliyah Ali wants to talk about with people through her latest multimedia project, People of Pattern. This project features traditional fabric crafts from 7 countries, including the hand-embroidered work from here in Vietnam. We'll get a chance now to talk with Aliyah Ali in our On the Mic segment this week to learn more about this special project.
I'm Aliyah Ali. I'm a Yemeni Bosnian American artist. The theme of my work revolves around questioning boundaries, the untangible and tangible things that divide us. I chose to change my perception about this and see what actually unites us. Fabrics are an example of what divide us and unite us all at once. They're a product of our physical earth. Cotton, linen, wool, silk, they're an expression of our creativity and imagination through the patterns we put on them. They're an archive and a reflection of the physical environment that surrounds us, our ways of living, and even our stories.
First of all, thank you so much for joining our program. So what is the concept behind the People Pattern project?
Thank you so much for having me. The People Pattern actually stemmed from another series called Cast No Evil. I am Yemeni, Bosnian, American. I live between Africa and the United States, which is North Africa and Morocco and the United States. So I have a lot of borders, and there's a lot of ideas of crossing these borders. Also, how do you relate to people? And I decided to use fabric as a way to somehow symbolize the things that either separate people or bring them together, things that make us similar and makes us different at the same time.
The project theme is about fighting hatred and ignorance with knowledge and beauty. So some may ask, how does fabric have to do with this?
I come from a culture where people don't like to be photographed. The women in my culture, they just don't like to be photographed. How do you tell the story of a culture without invading people's privacy? I take fabrics and I meet different communities, different people within the community who have these traditional fabrics, and I place them in a certain way so that they're not worn traditionally, thus creating sort of these abstract forms. So you're forced to look at it in a different way. It allows you to use your imagination. It allows you to think about who is underneath. Perhaps somebody in Mexico would look at the fabric that I found in downtown Hanoi and say, oh my gosh, is this in Mexico? The images that I take will bring certain cultures closer together.
So why did you choose 7 countries, including India, Indonesia, and Vietnam for this project?
The particular locations, they have to have a culture and be known in the textiles somehow. I made a long list and I ended up choosing them. And these were the cultures that I found were different enough, far enough from each other, but also still have a really living textile culture. And also some of them are known for their processes. So Mexico, for example, is quite known for its applique. Later on I realized it's really well known for its natural dyes. Vietnam as well for the embroidery. Indonesia for batik. Uzbekistan for the silk weaving. I wanted to go and understand what it is that I was photographing.
Alia Ali's journey to discover 7 ways of producing textiles has almost finished, with 2 more countries to visit after Vietnam. By the end of her journey, she will have spent 7 months working with local artisans to learn about traditional textile crafts, including applique in Mexico, indigo in Japan, handmade embroidery in Vietnam, batik in Indonesia, and block printing in India. To change the way people think about textiles and to focus their attention on patterns, Alia uses fabric to totally cover people when taking pictures of them. As she said, fabric can be beautiful on its own. It does not depend on who is wearing it.
So during your trip, have you found any cultural similarities so far?
Vietnam, for example, and when I went to the north, to Sapa and Ta Phin village, which is for the Red Zao, I saw that in their fabric there were rice fields, rivers, there was family. These are all symbols that were reflected in the embroidery. Now going to Mexico, there is the river. The river, the symbol is exactly the same. Another thing, for example, the rice, how it's reflected in Japan and Vietnam. In Japan, where it's a lot more geometric, and here was completely different, but it still represented the same idea. The fact that rice is such a big part of the culture, that it's something that feeds the culture, but also how red is a good luck in certain places, how red can also mean sort of blood in other places. You know, that's quite interesting.
Can you tell us about your explorations of hand embroidery in Sapa, Vietnam?
An incredible woman. Her name is Ta Mei, who I met. And I was put in touch by another friend, and I called her, and I went to Ta Phin, where she's based. When I was there, I realized, and I was really in search for the dye, for understanding, oh my gosh, how do the natural, the sweet, the yams, or I guess the sweet potato actually is what they're called, the indigo, I was so concentrated on this. But in fact, when I arrived, she said, well, we don't really dye so much as we embroider. And I discovered it's one of the most amazing ways of doing embroidery because it's seamless. In order to understand embroidery, you have to see the other side, which is also integral to my work because what's on the inside, you can look on one side and it looks so beautiful and clean, but on the other side, if it's really messy and it's, imagine if both sides were actually a work of art that are seamless. You can find this in certain cultures, like I said, Mexico and Japan. I absolutely did not expect to find it here. and it's phenomenal. They do cross-stitching. The Red Zao, they do cross-stitching, but in the opposite direction. So instead of working from the front, they use the back to make sure that the back is just as beautiful as the front.
Alia Ali finds the most comfortable mode of communication is through images and multi-sensory mediums, not language. That's why she has been constantly working on 2 projects that promote the value of images as a means of communication. People Are Pardoned, and before that, I Speak in Image. The I Speak in Image project was the 100-day through 5 countries, retelling stories of daily life in these countries through images.
I wanted to immerse myself in places where I also could not understand. I also could not read the language. Every letter is a symbol. And when you put these symbols together, they create an image.
Via these 2 projects, you seem to want to connect people through other ways than just language.
I'm so happy you asked this because I base all of my work on this. This is also why when I go from one place to the next, I accept that I'm a tourist. It's not a nice word because tourists haven't done so good at making this a nice word, but it's true. I'm an uninvited visitor. So how do I come and really make the most out of it by doing an exchange? Well, it's certainly not to say, just because I don't speak the language, it doesn't mean I can't engage. It just means I need to engage differently. And I've been very fortunate to have people to trust me enough to bring my art to these places. And that's the way that I can engage. And I always think about this when I'm making my art. It's a lot about design. It's about composition. And that's why it's very important to understand the symbols of a culture. It's about understanding colors, what it represents, because what would be offensive, what would not be offensive, and why whenever I make my artwork, I always say where it was made. Because I made that also for that culture. I hope it would, create sort of a communication with me.
What will be your next project following the People of Pattern?
People of Pattern still has quite a long way to go. So right now I'm really focused in on this one. I haven't really thought about what I would do next. Right now I'm collecting a lot of images, stories, and I'd like to make a book out of this. And then of course also exhibiting the work.
Once again, thank you so much for joining our program.
Now, as we promised earlier, we're going to learn more about the art of shibori. It is known as a Japanese dyeing technique that typically involves folding, twisting cloth and paper, then dyeing it in different types of inks. Now, there are many varieties of shibori using different materials and ways of inking, but it is usually used with cloth. But in this week's edition of Connecting Culture, we will take you to the workshop of Sagi, who is an Iranian artist. She experiences Japanese dyeing techniques, but using Vietnamese material, and that is the handmade paper of Zao.
Shibori is the Japanese technique for embellishing textiles by shaping cloth and securing it before dyeing. By folding, twisting, bunching or knotting cloth or paper, then dyeing it with indigo, a natural color, intricate patterns can be created. The final patterns depends on how tight you bind the cloth and whether or not you fold the cloth first. The special characteristics of shibori patterns are their soft or blurry edges. There's always an element of the unexpected when using the shibori technique. Shagi Pakide is an Iranian artist working predominantly in the medium of printmaking, drawing, artist book design and especially paper making. Her passion for creating diversity in drawing and print works using different materials attracted Sagi to the shibori dyeing techniques. It is all about how the different color patterns are shaped and preserved on the material, and handmade Vietnamese Zao paper has satisfied her art-making passion.
The paper is really high quality. The best thing that you need for shibori is that you have a strong paper that's not going to break. So Zao paper, since it has very long fibers, it doesn't break easily. You saw when we unfold, sometimes you had to just pull the paper. They have different kind of papers. Some of them really have beautiful fibers, and when you are finished dyeing, you can see them through. And also, it takes the ink beautifully, just dots of ink instead of designs. So basically, you fold the paper, you dip it in different kind of ways, in different kind of colors. With each personality, you have a different kind of shibori with the colors that you choose, and how the colors just mix together, and how you have different results on different kind of papers. And when unfolded, you have different kind of designs that sometimes it resembles to flower or snowflake or basically straight lines.
In just 10 minutes, simple paper has been transformed into colorful sheets that will be used to create handmade decor or contemporary artworks.
It's used to create like paper curtains, bookbinding, Japanese bookbinding. We decided maybe to do this to create some fans, also for their stationery, for the books that they use.
Kỹ thuật shibori thì trước nay người Nhật dùng để nhuộm trên vải, nhưng mà họ cũng có một cái loại giấy khác tương đương như giấy gió, đây là giấy washi, thì họ cũng ứng dụng cả cái shibori này trên cái giấy washi của Nhật Bản. Và vì vậy thì cái việc mà ứng dụng cái kỹ thuật shibori trên giấy gió thì nó rất là phù hợp và nó mang lại cái hiệu ứng rất là tốt.
For the first time in Vietnam, the Iranian artist is working with the ZAW project to organize a workshop on bookbinding and paper dyeing. The 2-hour workshop introduced to participants the Japanese dyeing technique using ZAW paper and a combination of colors and folding techniques.
I find the shibori very interesting, and to me it's just a very delicate way, and I'd love to experience with material, not only with paper, and see how it goes. Zoll paper, I think, is a fantastic little enterprise that they've started, and I wish everybody knows about it. I wish more people get to know about it.
Apart from introducing shibori techniques, the co-hosted workshop is a part of a project by the ZAW project and Sagi that aims to preserve and promote ZAW paper in daily life.
Mình nghĩ là cái việc ứng dụng, mình muốn là mọi người dùng những cái ứng dụng mà nó có thể ứng dụng tốt nhất trên giấy gió để mà mọi người có thể sử dụng được giấy gió nhiều hơn trong cái cuộc sống, trong sự sáng tạo của mình. Thì mình muốn là ứng dụng nhất là những cái kỹ thuật truyền thống, bởi vì ví dụ như cái kỹ thuật này nó hoàn toàn có thể sử dụng được những cái màu tự nhiên mà nó lại rất là phù hợp với giấy gió.
Many people really don't know how it is hard to make a ZAW paper and how it is really time consuming. So with this technique, each time that we have a workshop, each time that we present a product, it's going to help people to understand this process better. I imagine making this kind of documentary, present ZAW paper, so that we're going to prevent this from dying and disappearing.
And that is also the end of our program. If you would like to provide any feedback or comment on anything you see or hear on Culture Mosaic, please feel free to write to us at culturemosaic@vtv.vn. And make sure to include both your name and address. You can also log on to vtv4.vn or our YouTube channel at VTV4Go for more of our program. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode of Culture Mosaic. Goodbye for now.